The bank statement arrived on Tuesday. $760,000. My name. A mortgage I never signed for. My phone rang immediately after. The bank wanted payment. 6 months overdue. My perfect credit score plummeting. I called my parents in confusion. Dad cleared his throat. Mom sighed. Pay for your sister, Amanda. It's your duty. My sister's house. My financial future destroyed. I felt dizzy, betrayed by my own blood. The room spun as I realized my family had committed fraud against me. And they expected me to accept it. I always knew my place in our family. The responsible one. The planner. The achiever. Growing up in our modest suburban home in Wisconsin, I learned early that I was expected to be the rock, while my younger sister Amanda was allowed to float freely through life. Raquel, watch your sister, my mom would say, rushing out the door to her second job. Raquel, help Amanda with her homework. My dad would direct, even though I had my own assignments waiting. Raquel, let your sister borrow your new sweater, they'd insist, despite Amanda's history of returning my things stained or damaged. Despite this imbalance, I loved my sister. 4 years younger, with natural charm that drew people to her. Amanda and I shared secrets and dreams through childhood. I protected her from bullies and helped her navigate school. When she cried over her first heartbreak at 15, I held her all night, assuring her better days would come. College separated us physically but not emotionally. I worked through school, graduated with honors, and secured a job at a respected financial services firm in Chicago. Meanwhile, Amanda dropped out after 2 semesters, claiming college wasn't her thing, and moved back home. My parents never seemed bothered by this. Amanda is finding herself, they'd explain. When she maxed out her first credit card at 20, they paid it off. When she crashed her car after driving carelessly, they bought her another. When she wanted an extravagant wedding to Scott, a man she'd known for 6 months, they emptied their retirement savings without complaint. I built my life methodically. Starting at the bottom of my company, I worked 60-hour weeks, earned promotions, saved diligently, and protected my credit score like a precious jewel. By 30, I was eyeing management positions and researching first-time homebuyer programs. My apartment was small, but in a good neighborhood. My retirement accounts were growing. I felt proud of my independence. Last Thanksgiving, something felt off during our family gathering. Amanda showed up in a designer outfit I knew she couldn't afford on Scott's mechanic salary, especially with 2 young children. My parents exchanged glances whenever I mentioned my plans to buy a condo in the spring. You should wait on that, Dad said, suddenly interested in his mashed potatoes. The market might crash, Mom added, pouring more wine than usual. Amanda smirked. Why live in a tiny condo when you could have a real house? I dismissed their comments, attributing them to their usual protective nature. Later, while helping Mom find her reading glasses, I noticed bank statements on Dad's desk. What caught my eye wasn't the bank logo, but my name printed on the corner of an envelope I hadn't opened. Curious, I slipped the envelope from the pile. Inside was a mortgage statement for a 4-bedroom house in Oak Brook Estates, an upscale neighborhood 30 minutes from my parents. The borrower name, Raquel Lynn Martinez. Loan amount, $760,000. My heart raced as I stared at the paper. This wasn't mine. I'd never applied for this mortgage. I'd never even visited Oak Brook Estates. Yet here was a statement with my name, social security number, and a forged signature I was supposedly making payments on. I heard footsteps and quickly returned the envelope to the stack. Dad entered, his expression changing when he noticed me near his desk. Finding anything interesting? He asked, his voice unnaturally high. Just looking for Mom's glasses, I replied, my mind racing with questions I wasn't ready to ask. That night, I couldn't sleep. The mortgage statement haunted me. Why was my name on a loan I knew nothing about? Who lived in that house? How had this happened without my knowledge? The answer came 3 months later with that fateful bank call about missed payments. The pieces clicked into horrible place. My parents had used my excellent credit to secure a mortgage for Amanda's dream home, forging my signature and information. They'd hidden the truth from me as long as possible, making minimum payments until they couldn't anymore. Now they expected me to accept financial responsibility for a debt I never agreed to, a house I'd never set foot in, a fraud that could destroy everything I'd worked for. The 20-minute drive to my parents' house felt like hours. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The bank representative's words echoed in my head. Miss Martinez, your mortgage is 6 months delinquent. If payment isn't received within 30 days, foreclosure proceedings will begin. When I pulled into their driveway, I noticed Amanda's silver SUV parked alongside Dad's truck. Perfect. Everyone responsible would be present for this confrontation. Mom answered the door with a smile that faded when she saw my expression. Honey, what's wrong? You look upset. We need to talk, I said, walking past her into the living room where Dad and Amanda sat watching TV. Scott was there too, bouncing their youngest on his knee. I tossed the bank statement onto the coffee table. Someone want to explain why there's a $760,000 mortgage in my name that I never signed for? The room went silent. My father muted the television. Amanda suddenly became interested in her phone. Scott stared at the floor. Raquel, Dad finally said, clearing his throat. We were going to tell you. Tell me what? That you committed fraud? That you stole my identity? That you've potentially destroyed my credit and financial future? My voice rose with each question. Don't be so dramatic, Amanda scoffed. It's not like that. Then what is it like, Amanda? Please explain, because from where I'm standing, my family has betrayed me in one of the worst possible ways. Mom sat beside me, taking my hand, which I immediately pulled away. Sweetie, we did this for Amanda and the kids. They needed a stable home in a good school district. Your credit was excellent, and we knew you'd understand once we explained. Understand? You forged my signature. You took out a loan in my name without my knowledge or consent. We've been making the payments, Dad interjected. At least until recently. Business has been slow at the shop, and with Scott between jobs. I turned to Scott, who had the decency to look embarrassed. You're not working? Then how are you affording that house at all? It's temporary, he mumbled. I've got prospects. Amanda rolled her eyes. This is exactly why we didn't tell you. We knew you'd overreact. You've always been jealous of anything good happening to me. I felt like I'd been slapped. Jealous? Of fraud? Of theft? Are you serious right now? Family helps family, Raquel, Dad said firmly. Your sister needed this house for her children, your niece and nephew. It's your duty to help when you can. My duty? I help when I can, when I choose to. This wasn't my choice. You stole from me. Mom's expression hardened. Nobody stole anything. The house is an investment. Property values in Oakbrook are increasing every year. You're part owner on paper. Part owner? I'm the only owner according to the bank. The only one responsible for payments I never agreed to make. Amanda stood up, hands on her hips. You're being selfish. You're single with no kids. And a good job. I have 2 children who deserve a nice home and good schools, and they deserve that at my expense? Without even asking me? We were protecting you, Dad insisted. You worry too much about details. We knew you'd say no if we asked directly. Of course I would have said no. No one should commit to a $750,000 debt without consent. Mom patted my knee condescendingly. Honey, we've been making payments from your account. We set up automatic transfers. It's been working fine until recently. My blood ran cold. You've been accessing my bank account? How? The uncomfortable silence told me everything. More violations, more fraud. Just until we got back on our feet, Scott finally said. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, and checked my bank app. There they were, monthly transfers I'd overlooked, labeled innocuously as family savings plan. $2,000 each month, siphoned from my account for nearly a year. This ends now, I said, standing up. I'm calling the police. Dad moved quickly, blocking my path to the door. Don't be hasty. We're family. We can work this out. How? How exactly do we work out identity theft and bank fraud? Amanda started crying, right on cue. Please don't do this, Raquel. Think of the kids. They love their rooms, their yard. Their friends are in the neighborhood. Would you really take their home away? My mother joined in. If you file a police report, your father could lose his job at the credit union. We could all face charges. Is that what you want? To destroy your family over a misunderstanding? A misunderstanding? You deliberately stole my identity. You forged my signature. You accessed my bank accounts without permission. We're asking you to step up, Dad said sternly. To fulfill your obligations to this family. The payments aren't that much considering your salary. You were planning to buy property anyway. This is just helping your sister at the same time. I felt dizzy with disbelief. They truly expected me to accept this situation. To take on an enormous debt for a house I didn't choose, didn't live in, and couldn't afford. As I stood there, Amanda dried her strategic tears and reached for her purse. Oh, by the way, she said casually, these came for you. She handed me several credit card statements, all in my name, all for accounts I'd never opened. The room spun as I looked at the balances. $15,000 on an American Express, $23,000 on a Visa, $19,000 on a MasterCard, all maxed out, all in my name. What are these? I whispered, though I already knew. Just a few things for the house, Amanda shrugged. Furniture, appliances, landscaping. You should see the kitchen. It's gorgeous. Viking range, marble countertops. You'd love it. $57,000 in credit card debt on top of the mortgage. My family hadn't just stolen my identity once. They'd been systematically exploiting my good credit for years. You need to leave, my father said firmly. Take some time to calm down and think this through rationally. We're your family, Raquel. Where would you be without us? Who would you turn to in a crisis? Think about that before you do something you'll regret. I left in a daze, their manipulation and justifications ringing in my ears. They weren't sorry. They felt entitled to what they'd taken from me. And now they expected me to accept it, to bear the burden of their fraud out of family duty. As I drove away, my phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Don't be difficult about this. Mom and Dad always said you were the smart one. Smart people know when to help family. Don't make this worse than it needs to be. I turned off my phone, tears streaming down my face. My own family had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible, and somehow they'd twisted it to make me the villain for not happily accepting their theft. The sleek office of First National Bank felt oppressively quiet as I sat across from Daniel Cooper, the fraud investigator assigned to my case. His expression remained professionally neutral as he reviewed the stack of documents I'd brought. Miss Martinez, I want to be clear about what we're looking at here, he said finally. Based on these records, someone has fraudulently obtained a $760,000 mortgage, 3 credit cards totaling $57,000 in debt, and a $45,000 auto loan, all using your identity. Is that correct? Auto loan? I repeated, the room suddenly spinning. What auto loan? Cooper consulted his screen. A loan for a 2023 Cadillac Escalade. Financed through Motor Credit Union last September. The application has your social security number and what appears to be your signature. Another fraud I hadn't known about. Another debt in my name. My father works at Motor Credit Union, I said numbly. He's a loan officer. Cooper's eyebrows rose slightly. That's significant information, Miss Martinez. He used his position to facilitate this fraud, didn't he? Cooper chose his words carefully. It would explain how these applications were processed, despite some red flags. The income stated on the mortgage application, for instance, is nearly double what you've reported on your tax returns. My father hadn't just stolen my identity, he'd abused his professional position to make it happen. There's more, Cooper continued. The mortgage application lists you as co-owner with your sister, Amanda Russell, but the actual loan is solely in your name. The property taxes, insurance, and all liability fall exclusively to you. So they'd lied about that too. I wasn't part owner as they claimed. I was the only one legally responsible for everything. I need to see this house, I said suddenly. Cooper nodded. That might be helpful for our investigation. Would you like me to arrange for a representative to accompany you? 2 hours later, I stood with Cooper and a bank representative in front of a sprawling 2-story home in Oakbrook Estates. The house was imposing stone facade, circular driveway, professional landscaping with a 3-car garage. A far cry from my 1-bedroom apartment. No one answered the door, so the bank representative used their key to let us in. What I saw inside made me physically ill. The foyer featured a crystal chandelier that must have cost thousands. The living room held furniture I recognized from luxury catalogs. A massive television dominated one wall, surrounded by the latest gaming systems. The kitchen was a chef's dream with professional-grade appliances and custom cabinetry. This is how they've been living, I whispered. On borrowed money. My borrowed money. Upstairs was worse. Amanda's closet was packed with designer clothes, shoes, and handbags. Price tags still attached to some. The master bathroom featured a jacuzzi tub and steam shower. The children had elaborate themed bedrooms that looked like they belonged in a magazine. In the home office, Cooper discovered a filing cabinet containing more financial documents, all with my forged signature. Investment accounts, insurance policies, even a small business loan for a food truck venture that had apparently failed 6 months ago. Your father's fingerprints are all over this, Cooper observed. These applications all went through channels where he had influence. He used his industry knowledge to circumvent security measures. As we left the house, I noticed a neighbor watching curiously from across the street. On impulse, I walked over and introduced myself. "Oh, you must be Raquel," the woman said warmly. "Amanda talks about you all the time. Such a generous sister you are, helping them buy this beautiful home." "I'm Tara, by the way. What exactly has Amanda told you about me?" I asked carefully. Tara smiled. "That you're some big financial executive in the city who wanted to invest in family? Amanda says you insisted they take the house because you wanted your niece and nephew to have the best. She says you're basically their guardian angel." So Amanda had been spinning tales, portraying herself as the lucky recipient of my generosity rather than admitting to theft. I thanked Tara and walked away, my anger building. Back at my apartment, I found a voicemail from Jack, my boyfriend of 8 months. "Raquel, your mom called me." She explained what's going on with the house situation. "Look, I think you're overreacting. Families share resources all the time. It's not like they stole from a stranger. Just call them and work something out. This doesn't need to be a legal thing." I called him immediately. "You knew about this? For how long?" There was a pause. "They mentioned it at Christmas, when you were working late. They said you had agreed to help with the house, but were having second thoughts. They asked me to encourage you to follow through. And you didn't think to mention this conversation to me? Ever? I figured you'd sorted it out. Amanda showed me the paperwork with your signature. It looked legitimate, because it was forged. Jack, they committed fraud against me." Another pause. "Are you sure you didn't sign something and forget?" "Your dad said sometimes you sign things without reading them carefully." I hung up, stunned by this new betrayal. My boyfriend had been complicit, convinced by my family's lies rather than coming to me directly. How many others had they manipulated? How far did this web extend? The answer came in the following days as I received calls from friends and coworkers, all repeating variations of the same message. "Family comes first. You're being selfish. Just help your sister." One college friend even admitted my parents had approached her for a loan on my behalf the previous year, claiming I was too proud to ask directly. My family had been systematically using my name, my reputation, and my relationships to extract money and resources, creating an alternate version of me that existed to serve their needs. The real me, my goals, my boundaries, My future meant nothing to them. The final shock came when I accessed my email account and found dozens of messages in a folder I'd never created, labeled property management. There were communications with contractors, decorators, and service providers, all sent from my email address but written by someone else, presumably my father or Amanda. Most disturbing was an email exchange from just 3 days earlier with a real estate agent. The subject: listing options for Oakbrook property. Amanda wasn't just living in a fraudulently obtained house. She was planning to sell it, potentially pocketing the profits while leaving me with the debt. The email mentioned her plans to relocate to Arizona, where Scott had exciting business opportunities. They were going to take the money and run, leaving me holding the bag for nearly $1 million in fraudulent debt. As I sat among the wreckage of my financial life, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt and confusion began to crystallize into something harder, more determined. My family had calculated that my love for them would override my self-preservation, that I would ultimately surrender to their manipulation rather than fight. They had severely miscalculated. "Miss Martinez, please have a seat." Evelyn Parker, the HR director at my company, gestured to the chair across from her desk. Her expression was sympathetic, but professional. I knew why I'd been called in. The annual security clearance review for my pending promotion had flagged the credit issues and mounting debt in my name. Despite my explanation and the ongoing fraud investigation, the damage was done. "Raquel, I'll be direct. We value your contributions immensely, but the position you've been considered for requires financial stability. Given the current situation with your credit report, we're putting your promotion on hold." "For how long?" I asked, my throat tight. "Until these matters are resolved. I understand you're a victim here, but corporate policy is clear. Financial management roles require demonstrated personal financial responsibility, regardless of circumstances." The irony wasn't lost on me. My expertise in financial management was precisely why I'd maintained perfect credit for years. Credit my family had exploited and destroyed. "We can revisit in 6 months," Evelyn added gently. "I truly hope you resolve this situation quickly." But quick resolution seemed increasingly unlikely. The banking investigation moved slowly. The police were reluctant to pursue charges against family members without clear evidence of malicious intent. My parents and Amanda had crafted a careful narrative that they genuinely believed they had my implicit consent. My apartment lease was ending, and I'd planned to use my promotion bonus as a down payment on a condo. Now, with my credit in shambles and my income stagnant, I applied for a modest rental in a different building. The rejection came swiftly. Application denied due to adverse credit history. 3 more applications yielded the same result. Landlords saw the massive debt and delinquent payments and assumed I was a financial risk, fraud victim or not. Jackson, my best friend since college, offered his spare room. "Stay as long as you need," he assured me. "No rent until you're back on your feet." I accepted gratefully, packing my life into storage except for essentials. At 31, I was effectively homeless, displaced by my own family's greed. Sleep became elusive. I'd jolt awake at 3 a.m., heart racing, calculating the mounting debt and damage. During meetings at work, I'd find colleagues staring as I spaced out, lost in worries. My normally immaculate presentation began slipping forgotten appointments, missed deadlines, dark circles under my eyes that concealer couldn't hide. My manager suggested I take personal leave. "You're one of our best, Raquel, but you're clearly struggling. Take some time to sort this out." I couldn't afford unpaid leave, so I declined, promising to improve. But the strain was showing. Physical symptoms appeared: tension headaches, stomach issues, a persistent eye twitch. My doctor diagnosed anxiety and recommended therapy. "This level of betrayal causes trauma," she explained. "The financial damage is only part of what you're processing." Dr. Lena Matthews, a therapist specializing in family trauma, helped me understand the psychological impact. "What you're experiencing goes beyond standard identity theft," she explained during our sessions. "This is intimate betrayal by those who should protect you. Your core trust has been violated." While I worked to rebuild my psychological foundation, the external pressure intensified. My parents launched what could only be described as a smear campaign throughout our extended family and social circle. Raquel has always been selfish, my mother told my aunt, who promptly called to lecture me about family loyalty. Amanda needed help, and now Raquel is punishing everyone because of some paperwork issues. My father told his brothers I was having a breakdown and creating legal trouble for the family out of spite. Cousins I'd been close to started avoiding me. Family friends sent messages urging reconciliation, suggesting I was overreacting. At my grandmother's birthday dinner, which I attended only out of respect for her, relatives took turns attempting to convince me to drop the investigation. Your sister has children, my uncle reminded me, as if I'd somehow forgotten my niece and nephew existed. Would you really see them lose their home? Your father could face criminal charges, another aunt whispered dramatically. Is that what you want? I'm not the one who committed the crimes, I responded, my patience fraying. I'm the victim here. My grandmother took my hand. In my day, families solved problems privately. All this legal business, involving outsiders and family matters. It's not right, Raquel. I tried explaining the magnitude of the fraud, but they'd already accepted my parents' version. I was being difficult, ungenerous, vindictive. Even some friends began distancing themselves. It's just money, said Tessa, someone I'd considered a close friend for years. They're your family. Can't you figure out a payment plan or something? Would you take on almost $1 million of debt you didn't create? I challenged. She shrugged. If it was for my sister? Maybe. Social gatherings became minefields. I'd overhear conversations stop when I approached. Invitations dwindled. Jack and I had officially broken up after his continued insistence that I should be the bigger person and accept the fraudulent debt. Only Jackson and a handful of others stood firmly in my corner, understanding the severity of what had happened. They're gaslighting you, Jackson insisted, and getting everyone else to help. Don't let them wear you down. But the isolation was taking its toll. There were moments I almost believed the narrative they'd created that I was overreacting, being unnecessarily difficult. In my lowest moments, I considered giving in, accepting the debt just to end the conflict and regain some semblance of peace. Then came the email that solidified my resolve. It was a forwarded message from a real estate agent to Amanda, accidentally sent to one of my compromised email accounts they still had access to. The subject line, offer accepted on Arizona property. The body contained confirmation that Amanda and Scott's offer on a 5-bedroom home with a pool in Scottsdale had been accepted. The purchase price, $695,000. The funding source, proceeds from Illinois property sale plus cash reserves. They weren't just planning to sell the fraudulent house, they'd already purchased a replacement with the anticipated profits. Meanwhile, I'd be left with the original mortgage debt when the sale inevitably fell short of the inflated purchase price, plus the accumulating credit card balances and auto loan. That same day, I received a voicemail from Scott. Raquel, you need to back off with this fraud investigation nonsense. You're causing problems for everyone. Amanda's stressed. The kids are confused, and I'm getting really tired of it. I know where you're staying. I know your routines. Think about what matters to you and make the right decision before things get worse. The thinly veiled threat sent chills through me. I played the message for Officer Daniels, who'd been assigned to my case. That changes things, he said grimly. Threatening a potential witness elevates this substantially. That night, as Jackson and I were returning from dinner, we found my car in his building's parking lot with slashed tires and family traitors scratched into the paint. Officer Daniels took photos, filed a report, and promised increased patrols. This case is gaining priority, he assured me. Destruction of property and intimidation of a witness are serious offenses. I spent that night researching identity theft attorneys and found Meredith Sanders, who specialized in cases of familial financial abuse. Her website featured testimonials from clients who'd experienced similar betrayals. You're not alone in this, she told me during our consultation. Family-based financial fraud is more common than people realize, and often more devastating because of the emotional component. but there are established legal pathways to address it. Her confidence gave me hope. For the first time since discovering the mortgage, I felt like there might be a way forward, a path to reclaiming my financial identity and holding my family accountable for their actions. As I left her office with a clear action plan, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Your father had a stress attack because of this situation. Doctor says it's his heart. Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted? To destroy your family? Over money? I turned off my phone and took a deep breath. Their manipulation tactics were becoming predictable, escalating whenever I took steps to protect myself. I wouldn't be swayed by false medical emergencies or veiled threats. Not anymore. The family I thought I had was already destroyed not by my actions, but by their betrayal. What remained was for me to save myself from the wreckage they'd created. Meredith Sanders' law office buzzed with focused energy. Associates moved purposefully between rooms, paralegals compiled documents, and a financial forensic expert analyzed spreadsheets of my compromised accounts. Identity theft within families requires a specialized approach, Meredith explained. Reviewing our strategy. The emotional dynamics complicate things, but the law remains clear. What your family did was criminal, regardless of their relationship to you. We mapped out a three-pronged approach: criminal charges for the identity theft and fraud, civil action to clear the debts and restore my credit, and immediate protective measures to prevent further damage. First steps, Meredith said, sliding documents across her desk. Credit freeze applications for all 3 bureaus. Fraud alerts. New bank accounts at a different institution, and a restraining order against Scott based on his threatening behavior. The paperwork was overwhelming, but necessary. Each signature represented another brick in the wall I was building between myself and my family's financial exploitation. What about my parents and Amanda? Should I file restraining orders against them too? Let's start with Scott, since he made explicit threats. For the others, we'll send formal cease and desist letters first. Their response will determine our next steps. 2 days later, my family received official legal notices, formal documentation of the fraud allegations, cease and desist orders regarding any financial activities in my name, and notification of potential criminal charges. Their reaction was swift and fierce. My phone exploded with calls and messages, each more desperate or threatening than the last. From my mother, "How could you do this to us? After everything we've sacrificed for you? Your father could lose his job, his pension, our retirement." From my father, "You've made a terrible mistake. These lawyers don't care about families. They just want money. You're letting strangers tear us apart over a misunderstanding." From Amanda, "You selfish bitch. My children are crying because people came to take pictures of our house. Scott is furious. If we lose our home because of you, I'll never forgive you." From various relatives, "This is unconscionable. You've gone too far. Family matters should stay private. Your parents don't deserve this public humiliation." I forwarded each message to Meredith without responding. They were digging their own holes deeper with every threatening or manipulative communication. The bank's investigation accelerated after receiving our formal complaints. Daniel Cooper called with significant findings. "Miss Martinez, we've confirmed systematic fraud across multiple accounts. Your father's position at the credit union gave him access to override security protocols. There's evidence this activity extends beyond your accounts to other customers." This revelation changed the scope of the investigation. What began as my personal nightmare expanded into a potentially larger financial crimes case. The FBI became involved due to the institutional nature of the fraud. Special Agent Teresa Lawson interviewed me for hours, documenting every detail of my family's scheme. "Your father's actions potentially constitute wire fraud, bank fraud, identity theft, and abuse of position. The penalties are significant. Despite the progress, my daily life remained challenging. I continued living with Jackson, working remotely, when anxiety made office appearances difficult. My finances were in disarray, with legitimate accounts frozen during investigations and fraudulent debts still affecting my credit. Then came the family gathering that changed everything. My cousin Lisa's wedding should have been a joyous occasion. I'd initially declined the invitation, knowing my family would be there, but Lisa personally begged me to attend. "Don't let them take this from us too," she said. "I want you there." Meredith advised against it, but I went with Jackson as my buffer, arriving late and planning to leave immediately after the ceremony. I underestimated my family's audacity. During the reception, as guests mingled in small groups, my father clinked his glass for attention. "I'd like to propose a toast to the beautiful couple," he began conventionally. Then his tone shifted. "Family is everything. We support each other through good times and bad. We forgive mistakes. We don't turn on each other when things get difficult." His gaze fixed directly on me. Some people forget these values. They let pride and selfishness override blood ties. They choose to hurt those who raised them, who sacrificed for them, who love them unconditionally. Murmurs spread through the crowd. People turned to stare at me, some confused, others judgmental. "I pray that Lisa and David never experience the heartbreak of a child betraying them," he continued, voice breaking theatrically. "Of watching someone they love try to destroy their lives over a simple misunderstanding." Something in me snapped. Months of accusations, gaslighting, and manipulation crystallized into a perfect clarity. I stood, glass in hand. "I'd like to respond to that toast," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Jackson squeezed my arm. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." The room fell silent as I moved to the center of the gathering. For those who don't know me, I'm Raquel, another cousin of the bride. My father just shared some interesting thoughts about family loyalty. "Let me add some context," he omitted. I took a deep breath. My parents and sister stole my identity. They forged my signature on a $760,000 mortgage and $57,000 in credit cards. They opened fraudulent accounts in my name. They accessed my bank accounts without permission. When I discovered their theft, they expected me to accept it as my family duty. Gasps and whispers rippled through the guests. My mother stood frozen, her face ashen. Amanda gripped Scott's arm, panic in her eyes. When I refused to take on their fraudulent debt, they threatened me. They damaged my property. They tried to intimidate me into silence. They told everyone I was mentally unstable, selfish, vindictive, anything to discredit me. I turned to face my father directly. "You speak of unconditional love? Your conditions were clear. My complete financial subjugation. You speak of sacrifice? You sacrificed my financial future, my credit, my reputation, all without my knowledge or consent. You speak of betrayal? You betrayed my trust in the most fundamental way possible." The room was completely still. Even the servers had paused to listen. "I'm not pressing charges because I'm selfish. I'm pressing charges because what you did was wrong. Criminally, morally wrong. Family doesn't steal from family. Family doesn't forge signatures. Family doesn't threaten and intimidate. That's not love. That's exploitation." I raised my glass. "To Lisa and David, may your marriage be built on true respect, honesty, and love. May you never confuse control with care or obligation with affection. And may you always know the difference between supporting family and enabling abuse." I set down my glass and walked out, Jackson following close behind. Behind me, I heard the eruption of shocked conversations, my mother's theatrical sobs, and Amanda's angry protests. But I also heard something else, expressions of support, of understanding, of recognition from others who'd experienced similar family dynamics. That public exposure broke the family's unified front. My grandmother called the next day, her voice subdued. "I had no idea the extent of what they'd done. The way your father presented it. I'm sorry I didn't listen to you properly." Cousins and aunts reached out with similar messages. Some admitted they'd felt pressured to take my parents' side. Others shared their own stories of financial manipulation within the family. The most significant development came from an unexpected source. My uncle Robert, my father's brother, and a fellow employee at Motor Credit Union contacted Meredith directly. I've suspected unethical behavior for years, he confessed during our meeting. After hearing Raquel's story, I reviewed transaction records. Your father has been manipulating loan applications and credit reports for multiple family members, not just you. I've documented at least 7 cases of suspected fraud. This evidence accelerated the criminal investigation. The FBI raided my parents' home and the credit union, seizing computers and financial records. My father was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The public scandal my family had feared became reality not because of my actions, but because of their own criminal behavior. My phone rang late one evening as I was reviewing documents with Meredith. The caller ID showed Amanda. Against my better judgment, I answered. They're going to arrest Dad tomorrow, she said without preamble, her voice uncharacteristically small. Scott's already been questioned about threatening you. They took his phone. Mom's had 2 anxiety attacks. Are you happy now? This isn't about happiness, Amanda. It's about accountability. They're saying Dad could go to prison, that Scott could face charges for the car damage, that I might be charged as an accomplice. Is that what you want? To destroy everyone? I didn't create this situation. You all did. Every step of the way, you had choices. You chose to forge my signature. You chose to steal my identity. You chose to threaten me when I discovered the truth. There was a long pause. We were going to pay it back, she finally said, though her tone lacked conviction. Once the house value increased enough, we were going to sell it and clear everything. After buying another house in Arizona with the proceeds, her sharp intake of breath confirmed she hadn't expected me to know about that plan. Amanda, I've seen the emails. I know you were planning to sell the house, buy property in Arizona, and leave me with the mortgage debt. That's not. We wouldn't have. Stop lying. Just stop. The FBI has all the documentation. They know exactly what you were planning. Another pause. What do you want, Raquel? Just tell me what you want to make this go away. I want justice. I want my name cleared. I want accountability for what you all did to me. So you want revenge, she said bitterly. No. I want consequences. There's a difference. As I hung up, I felt oddly calm. For months, I'd been reacting to their manipulations, their threats, their narratives. Now, finally, the truth was emerging on its own terms, supported by evidence they couldn't dispute or distort. The next morning, I received notification that my father had been arrested on multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and misuse of banking systems. Scott faced charges for criminal threats and property damage. My mother and Amanda were under investigation as accomplices. The family that had pressured me to sacrifice everything for their benefit was now facing the consequences of their own actions. It wasn't the resolution I would have chosen. I'd never wanted to see my family criminally charged. But they had forced this outcome through their relentless exploitation and refusal to acknowledge the severity of their actions. As painful as the process was, I felt the first stirrings of something I hadn't experienced since discovering that mortgage statement. Hope. Hope that justice was possible. Hope that I could rebuild what they had destroyed. Hope that the truth, however difficult, would ultimately set me free. The conference room at Meredith's law firm had become my second home. Today, it was filled with a team assembled specifically for my case. Daniel Cooper, from the bank's fraud department. Special Agent Lawson, from the FBI. A credit restoration specialist. A forensic accountant, and Meredith herself. We're moving to the next phase, Meredith announced, distributing folders to everyone present. Now that criminal charges have been filed, we can accelerate the process of financial restoration. The credit specialist, Nadia Williams, outlined our approach. We've compiled comprehensive documentation of all fraudulent accounts. With the criminal case underway, we can file expedited fraud alerts and credit corrections with all 3 bureaus. Our goal is complete removal of fraudulent items from your credit history, not just notes about disputed charges. The forensic accountant detailed the full scope of the damage. Beyond the mortgage and credit cards we initially identified, we've discovered additional accounts, personal loans, store credit cards, even subscription services, all created using your information. The total fraudulent debt exceeds $1.2 million. The number was staggering. My family had been even more prolific in their fraud than I'd realized. "What's the timeline for resolution?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "For the criminal proceedings, we're looking at months, possibly a year or more," Agent Lawson replied. "Financial crimes cases are complex, especially with multiple defendants. But your financial restoration can move more quickly," Nadia assured me. "With the evidence we've compiled, most accounts should be cleared within 60 to 90 days. The mortgage may take longer due to its size, but we've already secured a suspension of collection activities. For the first time, I felt like I was moving forward, rather than merely treading water." The team had clear expertise, a detailed plan, and realistic timelines. I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. Implementing the plan required meticulous attention to detail. Every fraudulent charge needed documentation. Every account required separate fraud reports. Every communication with creditors needed tracking. It became almost a full-time job on top of my actual employment. I created a dedicated workspace in Jackson's apartment, walls covered with calendars, timelines, and to-do lists. Each completed item, each submitted form, each cleared account represented another piece of my life reclaimed. The first victory came when American Express officially cleared the fraudulent card from my credit report. "Account removed due to confirmed identity theft," the notification read. I actually cried when I received it, proof that the system could work, that the truth could prevail. More successes followed. Store cards, the auto loan, smaller credit accounts. Each removal improved my credit score incrementally. Each letter of confirmation, strengthening my resolve. Daniel Cooper called with an update about the mortgage. "The underwriting review confirms the application contained multiple falsified documents. We're proceeding with full discharge of liability. The property will enter foreclosure unless your sister and her husband can qualify for legitimate financing, which seems unlikely given their actual income." "What happens to them?" I asked, surprising myself with the question. Despite everything, I still worried about my niece and nephew's stability. "That's not your responsibility," he reminded me gently. "But typically, they'll have 30 to 60 days to vacate once foreclosure proceedings begin." The knowledge that Amanda's family would lose their home brought complicated emotions. I didn't want children displaced, yet I also recognized that home had been built on fraud. My sister's choices had created this situation, not mine. I channeled my energy into rebuilding my own financial foundation. With fraudulent accounts being cleared, I opened new bank accounts with enhanced security measures. I created updated budgets accounting for my current circumstances. I researched apartments within my means, preparing for independence from Jackson's generosity. The professional consequences began to reverse as well. My manager called me into his office with unexpectedly positive news. "The board reviewed your case and the documentation from the fraud investigation. Given the circumstances and your handling of the situation, they've decided to approve your promotion, effective immediately. Even with my credit issues still being resolved, your personal financial stability was compromised through no fault of your own. How you've managed this crisis demonstrates exactly the kind of judgment and integrity we value." The promotion meant increased income, which accelerated my recovery plans. I found a modest but secure apartment in a building, with good security important, given Scott's previous threats. The landlord, after reviewing my case documentation, approved my application, despite the ongoing credit issues. "We look at the person, not just the paperwork," he explained. "Your handling of this situation shows responsibility and character." As my practical circumstances improved, I focused on emotional healing as well. Dr. Matthews helped me process the complex grief of family betrayal. "You're mourning the family you thought you had," she explained during one session. "The parents you believed would protect you, the sister you trusted. It's a profound loss, and healing takes time." She introduced me to a support group specifically for victims of familial financial abuse, Meeting others who'd experienced similar betrayals helped normalize my feelings and provide perspective. Some members were years past their crises, offering living proof that recovery was possible. Through the group, I connected with Jordan, whose parents had similarly exploited his credit for years. Now, 5 years removed from the experience, he'd rebuilt his financial life completely. The hardest part for me was accepting that my relationship with my parents would never be the same, he shared. But I've built a new kind of family people who respect boundaries and practice actual love, not control or exploitation. His words resonated deeply. The family I'd grown up with had revealed themselves to be something very different from what I'd believed. But that didn't mean I couldn't have meaningful connections based on healthier dynamics. The criminal case progressed steadily. My father, facing the most serious charges due to his position at the credit union, accepted a plea deal that included restitution, probation, and permanent barring from the financial industry. The credit union terminated his employment and revoked his pension benefits after discovering the extent of his misconduct. Scott received probation and community service for the property damage and threats, with a restraining order prohibiting contact with me. My mother and Amanda received probation and mandatory financial counseling as part of their plea agreements for lesser charges of conspiracy and knowing use of fraudulent documents. The foreclosure on Amanda's house proceeded as expected. They relocated to a rental property still in a good school district, but far more modest than their fraudulently obtained home. The Escalade was repossessed. The designer clothes were sold to pay legal fees. Their Arizona dreams evaporated under the weight of legal reality. Throughout this process, I maintained firm boundaries. When family members attempted contact with appeals for reconciliation or accusations of cruelty, I redirected all communication through legal channels. My energy needed to focus on rebuilding, not managing their emotions or justifications. 6 months after that initial shocking phone call from the bank, I sat in Meredith's office reviewing our progress. The fraudulent mortgage had been discharged. All credit card debts had been removed from my name. My credit score, while not yet restored to its former excellence, had improved significantly. "We've accomplished in 6 months what sometimes takes years," Meredith noted with satisfaction. "Your meticulous documentation and cooperation with authorities made the difference." "What's left to resolve?" I asked, scanning the significantly smaller stack of active case files. "Mostly monitoring and follow-up. Ensuring all corrections remain in place. Finalizing the restitution arrangements. Addressing any new fraudulent accounts that might surface. Do you think there could be more accounts I don't know about?" "It's possible, but increasingly unlikely. The credit freezes and fraud alerts should prevent any new activity. And with your family under legal supervision, they'd be foolish to attempt anything further." As I prepared to leave, Meredith handed me a final document. "This might interest you. A former colleague of mine runs a nonprofit organization that helps victims of financial abuse. They're looking for someone with first-hand experience to join their educational outreach program." The flyer described a part-time role speaking to community groups about identity theft prevention, financial safety, and recognizing the signs of familial financial exploitation. The position would complement my regular job while allowing me to transform my painful experience into something constructive. "You've handled this situation with remarkable resilience," Meredith said. "Your story could help others recognize and escape similar situations before they escalate to this level." The idea resonated strongly. Throughout my ordeal, information had been my most powerful tool. Understanding the legal processes, knowing my rights, recognizing manipulation tactics. These had been crucial to my recovery. Sharing that knowledge might help others avoid or escape similar exploitation. I left Meredith's office with the application in hand and a growing sense of purpose. My family had tried to define me by obligation and exploitation. They'd attempted to reduce me to a financial resource rather than a person with my own rights and future. Their effort had failed. I was reclaiming my identity, financial, personal, and emotional. The journey wasn't complete, but for the first time since discovering that fraudulent mortgage, I could see a clear path forward. Not just to recovery, but to something stronger and more authentic than what had been taken from me. The courtroom felt smaller than I expected. Polished wood paneling, fluorescent lighting, the subtle scent of lemon-scented cleaner. I sat beside Meredith at the plaintiff's table, watching as my family entered with their respective attorneys. They looked diminished somehow. My father without his usual confident posture. My mother's face drawn. Amanda avoiding eye contact. Today marked the final restitution hearing, where the judge would formalize the financial arrangements resulting from their criminal plea agreements. After months of negotiation and legal maneuvering, the case was reaching its conclusion. Judge Eleanor Ramirez reviewed the documents before her, occasionally glancing up at each party. I have before me the proposed restitution agreement in the matter of Martinez identity theft and fraud. Before approving this agreement, I want to ensure all parties understand its terms and implications. She addressed my father first. Mr. Martinez, you have agreed to liquidate your retirement accounts and investment portfolio to provide restitution of $312,000 to your daughter. Do you understand and accept these terms? My father nodded stiffly. Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Martinez, the judge continued, turning to my mother, you have agreed to the sale of your vacation property in Michigan with proceeds of approximately $145,000 directed to restitution. Do you understand and accept these terms? Yes, Your Honor, my mother replied, her voice barely audible. The judge turned to my sister. Mrs. Russell, you and your husband have agreed to monthly payments of $1,200 for a period of 5 years, totaling $72,000 in restitution. Additionally, all proceeds from the sale of personal items purchased with fraudulent funds will be directed to restitution. Do you understand and accept these terms? Amanda's jaw tightened. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Ramirez studied the family for a moment before addressing me. Miss Martinez, do you find these restitution terms acceptable? I took a deep breath. Yes, Your Honor. The financial restitution, combined with the credit restoration already completed, adequately addresses the economic damage. Very well. The judge signed the agreement with a decisive stroke. This court approves the restitution agreement as outlined. Regular reports on payment compliance will be submitted to the probation department. Any failure to meet these obligations will result in potential revocation of probation and additional penalties. She looked at my family again. I want to emphasize the seriousness of these offenses. Identity theft is not merely a financial crime. It's a profound violation of trust and autonomy. When perpetrated against family members, it represents a particular kind of betrayal. The court has shown leniency in accepting the plea arrangements, but this leniency should not be mistaken for minimization of the harm caused. With a final tap of her gavel, it was done. The legal process that had consumed the past year of my life reached its formal conclusion. As we exited the courtroom, I felt a complex mixture of relief, vindication, and lingering sadness. Outside, my mother approached hesitantly, ignoring Meredith's protective step forward. Raquel, please. Can we talk? Just for a minute? I considered walking away but decided clarity might provide better closure. Briefly, we moved to a quiet corner of the hallway. My mother looked older than I remembered, the stress of the past year etched into her face. I want you to know we're sorry, she began. What we did was wrong. I see that now. Do you? I asked quietly. Because throughout this entire process, I've heard justifications, accusations, and excuses. I've rarely heard genuine acknowledgement of the harm you caused. She flinched. We thought we were helping Amanda. We didn't see it as hurting you. That's exactly the problem. You didn't see me as a person with my own rights and future. You saw me as a resource to be used for Amanda's benefit. We never meant. Intentions don't erase consequences, I interrupted. You deliberately forged my signature. You systematically stole my identity. You accessed my accounts without permission. These weren't mistakes or misunderstandings. They were calculated choices made repeatedly over years. Tears formed in her eyes. Can you ever forgive us? The question hung between us, heavy with implication. Could I forgive them? Perhaps. Eventually. For my own peace. But forgiveness didn't mean restoration of trust or resumption of relationship. I don't know, I answered honestly. Right now I need space and time. I need to focus on rebuilding what was damaged. I need to know that you truly understand the gravity of what you did, not just because you faced consequences, but because you recognize the fundamental violation of trust. And then? Could we be family again? I shook my head slightly. That's not a decision I can make today. If there's ever a path forward, it would require extensive therapy, absolute transparency, and complete acceptance of new boundaries. It wouldn't be the relationship we had before, because that relationship was built on my compliance and your control. She nodded sadly, seeming to understand that no quick reconciliation was possible. As she turned to leave, she paused. Your father and I are selling the house, moving to Florida to be near my sister. It'll be a fresh start for us. I wish you well, I said, and meant it. Despite everything, I didn't desire their suffering, only my own freedom from the dynamics that had damaged me. As my mother walked away, Amanda approached, her expression a mixture of defiance and uncertainty. So that's it? You've taken everything from us? And now you're done? I didn't take anything from you, Amanda. I reclaimed what was rightfully mine. We're struggling now. The kids have had to change schools. Scott's working 2 jobs. We're living in a tiny apartment because of you. Because of me? Or because of the choices you made? You lived in a house purchased with stolen identity. You wore clothes bought with fraudulent credit. You enjoyed a lifestyle built on theft. The fact that you now have to live within your actual means isn't punishment, it's reality. She blinked rapidly, tears threatening. We're still your family. Family doesn't exploit family. Family doesn't steal identity. Family doesn't threaten and manipulate. What you did wasn't family behavior. It was criminal behavior against a family member. So you're just cutting us off? After everything we've been through together? I'm establishing boundaries. I'm protecting myself from further harm. Whether those boundaries eventually allow for reconciliation depends entirely on your willingness to respect them and take responsibility for your actions. As Amanda walked away to rejoin our parents, I felt a weight lifting, not completely, but noticeably. I'd spoken my truth without anger or vengeance, but with clarity and conviction. Their response was their responsibility, not mine. Meredith joined me, portfolio in hand. You handled that well. Are you okay? Better than I expected? I replied, surprised to find it was true. Let's finish this. The final phase of recovery involved practical rebuilding. With the restitution funds, I secured a mortgage for a modest townhouse in a neighborhood I'd always liked. After months in temporary housing, having my own space felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. My credit score continued to improve, as the monitoring systems we'd established confirmed no new fraudulent activity. The promotion I'd received proved to be just the beginning. My professional reputation for integrity and resilience in the face of personal challenges opened new opportunities within the company. Most significantly, I began volunteering with the Financial Abuse Support Network, sharing my experience with community groups and professional organizations. What started as occasional speaking engagements evolved into a structured educational program about recognizing and addressing family financial exploitation. Your story resonates because it confronts the myth that family financial abuse only happens to the elderly or vulnerable, explained Diane Rodriguez, the network's director. You show that it can happen to financially savvy professionals and that recovery is possible. The work was deeply meaningful, transforming my painful experience into a resource that helped others. Each time someone approached after a presentation to share their own concerns or experiences, I felt the purpose in my pain. Healing came in unexpected forms. Jackson, who'd been my steadfast support throughout the crisis, gradually became something more. What began as friendship deepened into a relationship built on genuine respect and equal partnership, the healthiest connection I'd ever experienced. You know what I admire most about you? He said one evening, as we sat on my new patio, watching the sunset. Not just your strength through all this, but your clarity. You never lost sight of what was right, even when everyone was trying to convince you otherwise. I wavered sometimes, I admitted. There were moments I almost believed I was overreacting. But you trusted yourself enough to keep going. That's rare. 6 months after the final court hearing, I received an unexpected letter from my father. Unlike the manipulative communications of the past, his tone was different, reflective, and subdued. "I've been in therapy, trying to understand why I did what I did," he wrote. "The easy answer is that I wanted to help Amanda. The harder truth is that I've spent my life trying to control outcomes, believing my judgment should override others' autonomy. I violated your trust not just through the specific acts of fraud, but through a lifetime of treating you as an extension of my will rather than as your own person. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm trying to understand the depth of the harm I caused." The letter ended with no requests for contact or reconciliation, just an acknowledgement of wrongdoing and acceptance of consequences. It represented the first genuine accountability I'd seen from any family member. I shared the letter with Dr. Matthews during our now monthly check-in sessions. "This appears to be a significant shift," she observed. "How do you feel about it?" "Cautiously hopeful," I replied. "Not for immediate reconciliation, but for the possibility that they're beginning to understand the fundamental issue wasn't just financial, it was about respect and autonomy. And if they never fully understand, then I continue on my path. My healing isn't dependent on their recognition. It's something I'm building for myself, regardless of their journey." This was perhaps the most profound realization of my recovery, that my worth wasn't defined by their validation, that my boundaries weren't negotiable based on their acceptance. Just a mine. That my future wasn't contingent on their participation. 2 years after that first shocking call from the bank, my life had transformed completely. Not just externally through new home ownership, career advancement, and financial security, but internally through stronger boundaries, clearer values, and deeper self-trust. The crisis that had threatened to destroy me had instead revealed my capacity for resilience. The betrayal that had shaken my foundations had forced me to build something stronger. The family that had tried to exploit me had inadvertently empowered me to define family on my own terms. On the day I made the final payment on my legitimate mortgage, a moment of particular significance, given how this journey began, I hosted a small gathering of the people who had supported me through the crisis. Meredith and her team. Jackson, now my partner. Friends who had stood by me. Colleagues from the support network. "I want to thank you all," I said, raising a glass in toast. 2 years ago, I discovered my family had taken out a $760,000 mortgage in my name. They told me paying it was my duty. I almost believed them. I paused, looking around at the circle of authentic support I'd built. What I learned through that experience is that our true obligations are to integrity, to truth, and to our own well-being. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to establish are with the people we love most. But those boundaries aren't selfish, they're essential. Jackson squeezed my hand supportively as I continued. Today, I'm celebrating more than a financial milestone. I'm celebrating the journey from exploitation to empowerment, from manipulation to clarity, from false obligation to authentic choice. The gathering continued into the evening, filled with laughter, conversation, and genuine connection. As I looked around at these people who respected my autonomy while offering their support, I realized I'd created something my birth family had never provided: relationships based on mutual respect rather than control or exploitation. This was the most meaningful restitution of all, not the financial compensation or legal vindication, but the reclaiming of my right to define family on my own terms, to establish boundaries based on respect, to build connections grounded in authenticity rather than obligation. The journey hadn't been easy. The pain of betrayal would always be part of my story, but it was no longer the defining chapter. It was simply one part of a larger narrative, a difficult passage that had ultimately led to a stronger, more authentic life than I could have imagined when this began. In the end, My family's attempt to exploit me financially had failed, but more importantly, their attempt to define me through obligation and guilt had failed as well. I had emerged not just with my credit restored, but with my autonomy affirmed and my resilience proven. That was the victory that mattered most. Would you have found the courage to stand up to your family in this situation? Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with loved ones to protect yourself? Comment below and share your thoughts or experiences. Like this video, if you believe in the importance of financial independence and healthy boundaries, subscribe for more stories about overcoming life's challenges, and share with someone who might need to hear this message of empowerment and resilience. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I wish you strength and clarity in your own path forward.